Take a sip of coffee every time you hear the words budget, residents, your choice in the next half hour. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, voters went to the polls, or at least a few of them did. The big winner, State Supreme Court Justice Pat Roggensacker, pulled 64% of the vote in a three-way primary against two liberal challengers. And in Waukesha, a tight race for an open assembly seat. The best-known candidate, one-time frontrunner Jeannie Tarantino, finished a distant third after being dogged by controversies about a divorce deposition and an AIDS drunk driving arrest. First-time candidate Adam Nylon appears to have won that race. Since there's no Democrat running, the winner of the Republican primary is a pretty heavy favorite to win in April. Governor Scott Walker delivered his second budget address. Remember the first one? Well, this one was a lot quieter. Walker proposed a middle-class tax cut, entitlement reforms, and the expansion of school choice. The Packers raised their ticket prices, but it's worth it. The country edged closer to the automatic sequester spending cuts. The Dolan for Pope buzz intensifies. Even Italian newspapers are now mentioning his name. But we start this morning with an inquest verdict into the death of Derek Williams in police custody. The jury recommended the three Milwaukee police officers involved in the arrest of Williams, who died in July 2011, face misdemeanor charges for failing to help him after he started gasping for air. The decision on whether to issue those charges will be made now by Special Prosecutor John Franke, who also conducted the inquest. Earlier in the week, Franke had ruled out asking the jury to consider felony charges against the officers. The three officers refused to testify during the inquest, pleading the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Four other police personnel also took the Fifth. Two of them ended up testifying after they were granted immunity. Joining me on the panel this morning, political strategist Linda Bruin, former State Representative Michelle Litchens, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, and political consultant Mary Jo Boss. We'll start with you, Lynn. Did the inquest jury make the right decision?
Well, I think for what they were supposed to do, probably yes, but they just had to find that there was sufficient cause to potentially issue charges. That's a very different decision than actually Franke has to make,
right.
Which is can he,
do you think will he issue the charges?
Wow, I think that's a hard one to call. The testimony was the expert testimony was all over the place.
But the political pressure is going to be pretty intense on him
especially
after this, because this is the first time in 25 years an inquest jury has recommended criminal charges against Milwaukee police officers.
Right, and I think that he might decide to let the jury decide how this should end, rather than him be the one that stops the train in the tracks. So if I had to guess, I'd say he's more likely to issue charges than not.
Now the real question is whether or not, and I'll ask you, Mary Jo Boss, whether or not what happened here was a mistake on the part of the officers, whether it was a bad judgment, or whether it was criminal. And this inquest jury is essentially saying it is a crime for those officers not to have more quickly administered CPR. What do you think?
I think, with what limited knowledge I know, it seems that it was a serious error in judgment. And that can be made. Whether it rises to the level of criminal, I don't know. But I think just having this inquest was a good thing. I think now we've seen some changes in policy. We've seen the Journal Sentinel, rise to the level of getting that video and making the public aware that these videos exist and bringing it out in the open, putting some sunshine on this process.
Okay, Michael Holt.
Well, if there were really some changes in police policy, I would assume it would be showing them, as part of training, showing them that 9-minute tape. I never believed, based on the history of these inquests, that anybody would ever be criminally charged. It's never happened in the past. I would be surprised if they are charged. And if they are charged, I think they'll be exonerated.
Why?
Just because the way the system is set up. Because there are all these loopholes. Now, is that justice from the black perspective? No. This person was allowed to die based upon prejudice. I'm not talking about racial prejudice. I'm talking about prejudice that they assumed that since he was a quote-unquote criminal, that he was making up this,
Well, I've talked to cops, and by the way, they'll say that on a regular basis, when you arrest somebody, they will say, oh, the handcuffs are too tight, or my head is hurting, or I'm out of breath. Are you saying, I guess the question would be that from now on, if someone says that and the officers do not immediately react, that now that rises the level of criminal, then the officers become the criminals?
You saw
yes,
the
I
tape
did.
too.
I did watch the whole thing.
There was no way, I know you well enough, and everybody in this panel, nobody on this panel would not have called for medical assistance given the same circumstances.
But remember, well, the police officers were not not watching that tape.
Yep.
You know, that was actually a straight-on shot from his
They were
car.
there.
Police officers, but they weren't actively watching it. And I think they just chased someone down for a block and a half. I think we really have to put ourselves in the position of the police officers who, like you said, are lied to every single day, and they're not really sure, you know, if the person really is in need in the car, but they went above and beyond to give him medical assistance.
Well, after 9 minutes, after he was dead, and some of the cops changed their testimony. One investigator said, "Oh, when I first arrived, he was face down. That's what he had in his report. Oh, I made a mistake. He was face up. That means that they probably had a knee to his back."
But Michael,
why they changed the testimony?
Under the law, there has to be you have to be an intent, and there was obviously no intent to harm Derek Williams, whatever his criminal background would be. And I think one of the dazzling details here is that one of the officers, when they realized he was in distress, gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation directly, even over and above what most cops, they're supposed to use some sort of a mask. They did not. He got to the point where
that's probably why they'll get exonerated.
Well, yes, because
if
you intend
shows that they didn't have an intent, and what they didn't use was a guard, which actual EMTs have to use a guard by policy. So this police officer clearly, at least that particular one, I could easily say that he had absolutely no intent to harm this man. But like Mary Jo said, to me it seems like a horrific error in judgment, rather than any intent to
which
ever.
consistently seems to happen in the black community with police officers. I mean, let's go back and be honest and just bring it all out. You know, the reality is 25 years of inquest, and this is the first time anybody has been recommended to be charged for something. All of these, I'm not saying that they intentionally did it.
Need to be judged on their own basis, and I agree with Lynn on all of this. The fact that they did render him assistance, and it was a terrible tragedy. It certainly should have been done differently. We have all the benefit of hindsight. We have the benefit of the videotape, but the reality is they had to make that decision in the heat of the moment.
And as Chef Clark says, police have to be 100%. They have to back 1,000.
But also, they're human beings, and there's a difference between a mistake, an error in judgment, and a crime. So now, this week, what has your glass half full and what has your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. Linda Bruin.
Well, with gas prices still rising, my gas tank is half full and my wallet is half empty.
Michelle Hitchens.
With the governor's budget, I'm actually like 90% full on that. I am a little bit disappointed that there's so much bonding in it, but hopefully the legislature can fix some of that.
Okay, Michael Holt.
Same topic. Half full, the inquest jury recommended charges, half empty because nothing's going to happen.
Okay, Mary Jo Boss.
My glass half full. Scott Walker presented a budget that, like no one else thought he could do, again, does not raise taxes. Half empty, call me greedy, but I would have liked more of a tax cut.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. My glass is half full because he did cut income taxes for the first time in forever. My glass is half empty because it's pretty small stuff. I mean, $100 a year. Next on Sunday Insight, tax cuts, the end of residency rules, expanding school choice, what's not to like and not like in the governor's new budget. And as we go to break, the Dream Team, First Lady Michelle Obama, and of course, Big Bird.
There's so many different activities you can do, indoors or outside.
Now I'm jumping to get moving.
Just find an activity that you like.
And now I'm dancing.
Good for you, Big Bird. Get moving. It's good for you.
This will ensure a tax cut for everyone, with the focus on making sure Wisconsin is more competitive for middle-class taxpayers and small businesses.
Governor Scott Walker presents his budget, a massive, sprawling document that covers all aspects of state government. The governor proposed a $343 million middle-class tax cut, proposed extending a freeze on property taxes while increasing spending on transportation and increasing aid to public schools, public universities, private voucher schools, and the state's health program. So let's start with one of the more controversial parts of the governor's proposal. Governor Walker wants to abolish residency rules, not just for Milwaukee, but statewide. Now, Walker cast the issue as one of basic fairness and workers' rights. Critics, like Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett, said that letting city employees choose where they live would decimate the city's tax base and hurt property values. So, Michael Holt, who is right?
I think, and this is for Republicans who always talk about states' rights and local rights, it should be left up to the local folks to determine whether or not you have residency or not. Because there's some other circumstances involved in it. You know, the city and the NPS, for example, use residency as a tool during negotiations. Now, granted, they don't have to do that anymore because of Act 10, but it should be a local decision to whether or not people who live in the city of Milwaukee
shouldn't it be an individual decision? I mean, is there any other area of life where the government, where the employer dictates where the employee lives, but also where his family lives, where his kids live?
They're on the public dole.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, really?
And, yeah, I mean, so there is some credibility to the assumption that a police officer who lives in the community will care more about that community and the residents than somebody who lives 50 miles away.
Okay, well, now you're the editor of the Black newspaper in Milwaukee.
No, associate publisher now.
You do not even live in the county.
Well,
we're private. We're a private business.
Okay, Michelle Litchins.
You know, what does it say when a mayor is fearful that property value is going to go down in their municipality because everyone's going to flee because obviously no one wants to live there unless they are required to live there for their job. I believe that it doesn't bode well for him. But I think that when the state invests so much money in the public school system and MPS, and they have to hire 700 new teachers, I think we owe it to every taxpayer in the state of Wisconsin that MPS is allowed to hire the best teachers for the job.
That's an interesting point, because right next to it on the newspaper on Friday, where they're talking about the residency rule, there is the story that there are 700 vacancies in the Milwaukee Public Schools, and the shortage is so great, they were going to look for teachers in Puerto Rico and Spain.
Look, both sides are right on this. There's no win-win here. If you get rid of residency, unions win, as well as school kids who have a better choice of qualified teachers. If you keep residency, property taxpayers win because the flight is real. It's happened in all the other major cities.
Why?
Because people will tend to, over time, it doesn't happen immediately, they'll tend to, over time, move, and usually it's because parents leave because they want better schools. So the one thing Scott Walker's done that hasn't happened in other parts of the country, which I think was very smart of him, was he expanded vouchers, which will keep more of these firefighters and cops and nurses living in their own home because they actually don't have to flee because of the schools.
Okay, interesting.
I think Lynn is exactly right. John Norquist knew you can't build a city on pity. That was his line. And Tom Barrett has got to get on that page. He's got to start using school choice and the Brewers. He's got to talk up Milwaukee about the great things. Residency requirement is gone. He's got to work on the
Tom Barrett is not a big supporter of school choice. No, but MPS they've already created these waivers where you can take about 3 or 4 years to move into.
I just think it is extraordinary when the mayor of Milwaukee's major argument is that my city is so craptacular that people cannot wait to get out. Therefore, we have to build a wall. It does remind me of the last time a city was afraid people were going to leave and built a wall. But I suppose think about it. East Berlin kind of had the ultimate residency rule. Leave and we'll shoot you. You may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's dish out some unsolicited advice. Linda Bruin.
Well, this is to Republican State Representative Joe Sanfilippo and Democratic State Senator Lena Taylor. If you're going to make an agreement about flipping votes or buying votes, don't do it. He did it for his county board downsizing proposal, and that's not what their voters voted for when they voted for both those folks.
Michelle Litchins.
To the media, who were in a tizzy this week because they weren't invited to go on the green with the president and Tiger Woods. You're all upset, okay? The dance is over. Now it's time to start actually reporting on the news.
Michael Holt.
Well, here's some unsolicited advice for the mayor, since y'all brought it up. Better start pushing school choice to keep some of these folks here, because residency is over.
Mayor Joe Bas.
My advice is for the school choice advocates. It wasn't easy to get the choice expansion in the budget, and it's not going to be easy to get it passed. So keep the pressure on and bring people into those schools so they can see what's going on.
Well, my advice to congressional Republicans, do not blink. Let those sequester spending cuts go into effect. It is not the end of the world. As Charles Krauthammer said, this is the most overhyped apocalypse since the Mayan calendar. Next on Sunday Insight, we'll talk about parts of the governor's budget the Republicans are not happy with. Well, Republicans control both houses of the legislature, so they get to shape the next state budget. But there are already signs that some Republicans are unhappy with parts of Governor Walker's budget. Some conservatives say they would like to cut taxes even more than Walker proposed. Others were reluctant to expand school choice into cities like Green Bay and Madison, where children in failing schools would be eligible for scholarships to go to private schools. So let's tee that question up. Is expanding choice statewide a good idea, Michelle Litchins?
I think it is a great idea. I think if we really believe in educating kids, we need to make sure they have the opportunity to go to successful schools, especially when they're locked and stuck into a school that is failing. I think your point was very good about making sure that the school choice people are really on top of this to make sure that it does pass the Senate, because there are a lot of people that are not sure that they want to see this happen.
There are a lot. You've been in the Assembly. There's a lot of speculation, though, that it's dead on arrival in the Senate. You don't have that many votes to give away. There's almost no Democratic support for school choice.
Yeah, but I do think you're going to see a lot of support for this around the state, especially when you hear the stories from parents where they have their second, third, and fourth graders stuck in these schools that are failing. We need to give them an option.
Okay, Michael Holt.
Well, everybody knows my opinion on school choice. And I think people should understand that the governor is talking about only in areas where there are failing schools. That's not just blanket vouchers all across the board. But more important, this is an important issue, increasing the amount of money given to the schools.
By 14,
$6,400 is almost a ridiculous sum. And when you talk about NPS has $15,000 per kid. I think Nicolay is $20,000 per kid, but we're supposed to run these schools on $6,400?
Okay. Mary Jo.
No one should be surprised by this. Governor Walker worked with DPI to come up with a report card for these schools. He said, okay, where are we? Now we know where we are. Now we know which schools are failing. He's going to do something about it. That's how he operates.
Okay, Lynn.
Well, I think the issue that's fascinating to me is that given the closeness of the breakup in the Senate, the Republicans who have issues with this bill will work with the governor, and the governor's already signaled willingness to tweak this, because if he doesn't have their support, it fails. So that's a big deal here, and I think some of the Republicans, like Schultz, will make the best of that opportunity.
Well, I think that the burden ought to be on the opponents of the expansion of school choice to explain why they think that any child in the state of Wisconsin anywhere should be forced to go to a failing school, why that is in anybody's interest. So, is what they said this week the same thing as what you heard? Let's go around the table. What did they say? What did you hear?
Well, Governor Walker said he wanted to widen I-94 by Wood National Cemetery. What I heard was his willingness to disturb the remains of Civil War veterans, Medal of Honor winners, just so the people in Waukesha and further west can get home a little earlier.
Michelle Litchens.
Recently, the president said that if Congress won't act to protect future generations, I will. He was talking about limiting coal power plants with the EPA through executive order. What I heard is, I'm a tyrant, I'm going to get my way, and I don't care how much you all pay for electricity.
Michael Holt.
Sheriff David Clark made some politically correct responses to some critics of his about some of his comments. But what I heard was he said for y'all to kiss my, you know what.
Whoa, okay, Mary Jo.
Chris Larson said that giving kids school choice is like giving people who don't like the parks country club memberships. What I heard, great schools are a luxury poor black kids don't deserve.
Well, what I heard was the White House press corps, and you mentioned this before, complaining about the fact that they didn't have enough access to the Obama administration. They were being manipulated. What I heard was their realization, so just because we act like lapdogs doesn't mean we want to be treated like lapdogs. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Linda Bruin, you're first.
Well, my loser is the FBI, who sent a memo urging their employees to stop using Bureau cell phones to send nude photos and explicit messages. A memo? How about firing those Romeos and Juliets? My winners are all those who protect and defend us with integrity and honor.
Michelle Litchens.
My winners are the Republicans in Congress who continue to stand their ground on sequestration. They're willing to take the blame and the praise for cutting 0.25% of the total budget. I'm proud of you all for standing your ground. My loser is President Obama. When referring to the Republicans, he said that protecting the rich is what binds their party together. Really? Mr. President, stop campaigning. You have a responsibility to lead this country out of this fiscal mess. So get off the campaign stump, stop running your mouth, roll up your sleeves and get to work.
Michael Holt.
My winners, if the governor's budget goes through, supporters of educational options for low-income people. They're the big winners. My losers, Jesse Jackson Jr. Both he and his wife are going to jail for misusing campaign funds. And Jesse Jr. bought a $40,000 watch. He shouldn't be in town anyway.
Mary Jo Boss.
My winners, Brewer fans. Don't let the snow outside fool you. Spring training is in full swing. Tickets are on sale at Miller Park, and baseball season is just over a month away. Makes you feel warmer already, doesn't it? My loser is the MATC board, which seems determined to leave cost control tools provided by Act 10 on the shelf again and extend a deal to approve a deal extending its union collectively bargained contract. Property taxpayers, hold on to your wallets.
Well, my winners, believe it or not, government workers who will soon be free to choose where to live. How about that for worker rights? My loser, Mayor Tom Barrett. Now, Barrett says that unless they are forced to live in his city, people will leave in droves. Doesn't sound like a mayor with a heck of a lot of confidence in his own city, does it? Thanks for joining us and joining me for my radio show on Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.